Welcome to today's episode of Molecules to Medicine podcast. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are AI Jules and specialize in helping healthcare life science companies scale their business and revenue and explore how AI is reshaping the industry and accelerating innovation. So if you want to learn more about how to take your healthcare or life science business to the next level, make sure you stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs and we'll get back to you. I am your host, Hardeep. We have a very exciting guest for you today. We have Curtis Sprouse, the CEO from Eureka Connect. So welcome, Curtis.
Hi, Hardeep. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. It's great to...
And where in the world are you calling from?
I'm calling from just north of Boston, a town called Ipswich, Massachusetts. So there's an Ipswich, England. So there's a tie there. There's actually a lot of our communities actually here in Ipswich, Massachusetts have the Rotaries are very well connected with Ipswich, England. So I have a son that actually performed at a concert in Ipswich, England. So
interesting. Okay. There. I don't think Ipswich, England is probably as nice as the one in America, but I'm sure the weather, I know we've discussed it, the weather's probably very similar. Well, thank you for joining. So tell us a bit about your background, Curtis, and the journey that led you to Eureka Connect and any pivotal moments or experience that have shaped your career.
Absolutely. So background in finance and accounting, CFO, CEO of several startups. I ran a consulting firm for 20 years. Called Boston Market Strategies. It did third-party payer strategy and clinical trial process efficiency consulting. Worked with over 400 products in launching and managing the life cycle of those assets over that 20-year period. Big pharma device. You can imagine the spectrum of things you would see with that many products. Also did quite a bit of work with academic medical centers and working with them on clinical trial design and process efficiency. So gained great insight into sort of the universities and those sort of early stage research and development projects, and became quite fascinated with the idea of translation and the idea that we weren't getting enough of the really high quality science into the marketplace. And my solution for that was in 2009 to start a behavioral science company. Develop the people, focus on making Hardeep a better leader, better collaborators as a precursor to helping him understand regulatory process and clinical trial process and fit within a strategic and what is the optimal positioning of a technology relative to unmet need, all the things that you're quite adept at and very familiar with your research background and the work you've done in industry. And then I also run a not-for-profit called the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship, where we help these scientists take their ideas from concept to market. And to date, we've got about 477 graduates of the program and started over 250 companies, or helped to advance over 250 companies in our interactions. So we meld the behavioral with the translational works. I sit on the board of 3 therapeutic companies, 2 device companies, so I'm very involved with the companies themselves and bringing these particular resources to support them in their development and advancement.
Excellent. So it's really about getting the best out of those employees at those companies and really trying to, would you say, mold them into being the best they can be, and identifying where their sort of strengths are, or where their weaknesses are, and what they need to work on to get the most out of them?
We don't teach people how to lead. We just put them in roles of responsibility and hope they figure it out. And so what we do is we use these validated instruments to understand at the core what I call behavioral mechanism of action. Why does Hardeep act and react the way he does? Right. So, we're looking at it. Naturally, we look at things like motivational theory. Are you a driven guy? Now, and what's the strength of that drive? If we look at things like energy, dominance, discipline, competing, are you, if you just take me, for instance, I'm high energy. I talk fast, walk fast, drive fast, eat fast. That's not necessarily good. Sometimes I'm moving too fast, right? And 99 out of 100 it's not great because I have to moderate my speed, my intensity. Yep. So I could slow down my speech. Like even now, I'm trying to just sort of not move at a fast pace and not talk too fast because you're more moderate. Your energy's more moderate. You're not moving fast and you're not talking fast, so I'm trying to better match you, right? Dominance, the need to control. You can't make somebody dominant who's not dominant. If you're not a dominant personality, that's hardwired, right? And then you look at discipline. also hardwired. If you look at these people that are disciplined, look at athletes. Michael Jordan was a great athlete, but he also was tireless in his work ethic.
Of course,
Kobe Bryant, tireless in their work ethics, right? It's not just being talented. It's about that work ethic. And so, again, that's hardwired. You can't make somebody a Kobe Bryant. You can't make somebody a Michael Jordan. And then last is competitiveness. And I could use those two, again, for those of your audience who aren't basketball fans. I mean, those two were just unbelievable in their competitive drive, their need to win, right? So you can't teach that. So understanding where someone is on that spectrum relative to learned behaviors, things like interpersonal skills, social skills, goodwill, communication, collaboration, compromise, accommodation. It helps us to develop strengths in the individual as a leader and collaborator. And we take an objective approach to that. What we're saying is if I'm going to give Hardeep, $25 million to do the first phases of developing an asset, why wouldn't I invest in making him the best leader I can make him?
Of course.
And so that's what we do. We use the behavioral data to help propel the team in a more productive way. Just one last note on this. I was talking to one of my companies this morning that I consult with, and I was talking to the three founders. And one of the founders is an older clinician. And I was talking to him about, it's time for the team to go through the assessment. And he goes, I don't want to do it. Right. And I said, I'm not asking. We need you to understand how to be a better leader. And he goes, we have a small team. We work well together. And I already see things where other people on the team, the other two members of the team, complain about this guy.
Right.
And I'm like, I know you don't work well because the other two partners are complaining to me, who's new to the team. And if they're complaining to me, that means there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's the kind of stuff we try to reduce that conflict so that we can get better. Because you know as well as anybody, Hardeep, it's hard to take an idea from concept to market. Yes. It's really hard.
And dealing with people is probably the hardest thing, and especially in the corporate world where you're sort of thrust together with strangers essentially, and you spend more time with these people than your family, and having to find that balance of great productivity while staying professional and driving whatever projects forward. So I think it's a very useful tool that companies can use to get them at the highest efficiency and productivity out of their workers and to automate for their business. And so, Curtis, do you see any emerging trends or technologies that excite you the most in your area of work?
I'm very fortunate because of the IBE. I get to see really early stage stuff that is just extraordinary. Some of the thinking. Yeah. And some of this technology, because of things that you're doing, like AI, and being able to move things more quickly through the process, I think we're going to see these things get to market much quicker than we would have 10 years ago, right? Yeah. Because we can better understand the patient journey now. We can better understand where the product fits relative to the condition that we're trying to address, the severity of disease, the length of disease. These are all things that we can develop better and deeper understanding of. We are also seeing advances from the standpoint of chemistry and biology as a result of an engineering, as a result of things like AI being able to help us move more quickly to develop solutions. Some of the things that I'm working with that I think are really interesting are bacterial phages. They've been around a long time. Many people don't understand bacterial phages. There's been a tremendous body of work done in Russia in this area. And the scientist I'm working with, Nathan Brown, who's the innovator of this bacterial phage technology and the companion diagnostics, has really advanced some of the thinking and utilization of the sort of the body of work that had been done. And so I think we're going to be in a position in the very near future to use a bacterial diagnostic platform to understand what is the condition of that patient relative to a spectrum of things that could be causing disease, fungal infections, overgrowth of bacteria, and then creating phages to address very specific conditions in a highly effective way, and addressing some of the large populations where antibiotic resistance is an issue. So I think this is a very interesting area of science. I think it's very attainable. I think I'm working with companies in neuromodulation, a couple of them. I think there's new devices around sensing. Things like one of the companies I work with has technology. It's a non-invasive platform for looking at hydration and hemoglobin at the cellular level. and be able to look at, are you dehydrated? Are you suffering from edema? And when does that occur? If you're in the hospital and you've got somebody in an ER, an OR, or even in dialysis, do we understand changes in hydration that could be critical to that patient's stability and being able to continue to do the procedures? So those are just a few. I can go on and on if you want me to.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're working in collaboration with medical devices or med tech developers there to find different products to give you that extra insight to complement your business. And what would you say is the biggest opportunity out of those within the behavioral dynamics spectrum?
Well, on the behavioral side, it's interesting because it's sort of two questions that you've alluded to, which is on the technical side, which is the largest opportunity, and then on the behavioral side. And I think it's a great question that I don't think anybody's ever asked me. I would tell you that from a technology perspective, time will tell, right? The data will tell, right? Are bacteriophages going to be the true solution for antibiotic resistance? There are passive thinking, and there's a body of data that exists that suggests that that's a very real possibility. Right. So how quickly and how fast that materializes gets back to another part of your question is this team the best team to do that?
Right.
Meaning from how they act and react and collaborate, will they accentuate the technology based on the decisions they make, the steps they take, the capital they raise? And I believe this company is one of those that could do that. I think the two founders are extraordinary leaders. They're young, relatively young. I mean, one of them has over 20 years experience, so they're not, I guess, when you're almost at 40 years experience, 20 years looks young, right? That's where I'm at. But so I would say that team is one that's really gets it. I have other teams like the one I was describing to you where I think they're very talented from a technical perspective, but I don't think all of them understand leadership the way they need to. I mean, I know they don't. Yeah. And they believe because they've been around a long time that constitutes the right complement of experience to help them navigate this process of taking an idea from concept to market. Maybe the data will help. I think if I look at the three leaders, I think the data will definitely help two of them. One of them I know it already has because I've done work with him. The third one, I don't know. Time will tell. And that will have a major impact on the trajectory of that company. If you have one person that is not optimizing their ability to contribute, it's going to have an effect. And that's what many leaders and groups don't understand is one person can be detrimental to the company. And as you know, it's really hard to take an idea from concept to market. And anything you can do to improve the statistical likelihood that can occur, why wouldn't you take that chance? Why wouldn't you do it?
Of course. I mean, it's cutthroat as it is, so anything that can give you that extra edge is definitely always worth exploring and trying in business. I totally agree. So thanks for that. Yeah. So in terms of where EurekaConnect is right now, tell me a bit more about what it is you do. Who do you do it for?
So I spend probably, depending on the time of year, 50 to 70% of my time working with teams, developing those teams. I'm typically retained by the C-suite. So I'm most often a CEO or COO or somebody, president of a division, will hire our firm to come in and use our assessments. So it's 4 validated instruments to develop this profile of the individuals on a team. And that can range from, like, I've got a project I'm launching right now where the leadership team is 8 people and the company is relatively small, 35 people, but they're about ready to go to market with a big product. They've just gotten FDA approval. And that team is relying on, they've got contract sales organization they're working with. So they've sort of outsourced many of the functions, Hardeep. But we're going to go in and do basically 2 projects, one with the executive leadership team and then one with all the other key functions that are managing these resources. And we'll do the profiles, we'll do one-on-ones with them where we give the individual insights into what things could be disruptive to their leadership or collaboration. And then, and we look at things like, is the individual really stressed? Do they lack confidence? Is that affecting how they engage? Meaning we see massive avoidance scores. Out of 0 to 100, their avoidance score is 95. Their accommodation score is 95. Their compromise score is 95. They're just not engaging. Right. And it could be a result of high level stress and low confidence because I've never launched a product before. Private equity guys want to see us deliver this on a timeline that I've never achieved before. So we look at those factors and then we help the individual understand what they need to do to move across those factors. And then we do team training. So we expose a cultural dynamic by taking all that individual data and we put it into a profile and we look at an exception report. Where does the team optimize or not optimize across things like control, influence, comprehension, social acuity, connection, building trust? And we break it down into an objective understanding of where the team is. And then we do exercises, case studies, and discussions in those team training sessions where it really tease out what are the factors. So many companies will do case studies, but they don't do it with the data, looking at what can we anticipate the reactions being of the team relative to this particular situation. Yeah. And then how do we correct for that? Not just looking at a case study from a theoretic perspective, but we look at it from what is the data telling us the team's going to naturally do. And then what we do is we partner people up, Hardeep, where we say, okay, Hardeep and Kurt now have decided that they know what they're personally going to work on. I'm going to work on I have a low compromise score, so I can be cynical, I can be judgmental. And then I'm overconfident, so it's accentuated when I know the topic. I might be even stronger in my views and ideas, and then I'm competitive and dominant. So you can sort of see the theme here, right? Kurt can project a very strong position on an idea, and it might be hard to get him to see my position. Where yours might be, and again, I'm making this up, I don't have data on you, but yours might be that you are more, you're more moderate dominant, moderate expertise, moderate competitiveness. So you're looking for a cerebral interaction, but you hate confrontation, so your avoidance score is high.
Yeah.
So you and I would have to, by understanding that data, we could work on, okay, well, what are you doing to correct for yours, where you engage more directly, and what is Kurt doing to moderate his intensity? And then every week, you and I would have those discussions. We call it mentor accountability, where Hardeep's helping Kurt, Kurt's helping you. And we find that kind of coaching, where you make each person on the team not a teacher, it accentuates the learning process.
Yes.
And that's how we engage on this behavioral side. That's sort of the cycle of what we do.
Well, that reminds me when I was just coming into work in my career, and I was on a graduate program for a US pharma company, Abbott actually, and they took us on a day out, and they wanted us to go through some of these behavioral assessments called insights. And one thing we realized is that, like you say, you got these personality traits. Myself and a colleague of mine, we were very dominant. We were trying to solve a problem that was set out for us, and we were very dominant in solving this problem. We were very loud, we were very boisterous about it, and other people's voices just got drowned out. And we were told, that was highlighted to us, that to be able to bring in other team members into it. And to our amazement, what her input was actually better than ours and was correct, but it was understanding to utilize people's personality traits and to be mindful of including those back into your team, and to make sure that you're utilizing everybody in there who all can have meaningful inputs, and not get sort of blindsided and tunnel visioned with the way your brain is operating and working. I found it very, very useful to go through things like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's very, very interesting. I mean, can you share any real world examples of any customers that Eureka Connect have achieved meaningful results?
Well, yeah, I think if you look at companies like Alcon, we've worked with a number of leadership teams at Alcon, where I'm really proud to say that some of the people that have left Alcon have gone on to be CEOs of companies, and they weren't CEOs when they were there. A number of people have gone on to either global leadership roles or CEO roles. Would they have done it without the Eureka program? I think, knowing the kind of people they are, my answer would be yes to that. But I think that they got there faster, and they're better at building teams because they've gone through the program. I think if we look at things like companies like Momenta, we worked extensively with their R&D teams, not only on the Eureka side, but on the IBE side. They put their R&D team through, and that was highly successful. They exited to J&J for $6.5 billion. I think we've looked at teams at Sanofi where we work extensively with their R&D teams, where we've been able to help advance many leaders individually in their teams. I think those are just a few examples. There are literally 100 examples of small companies where we've worked with groups like 48 Hour Discovery, one of the companies I'm on the board of, where we've helped to deal with some difficult issues on the team over the years. And that company continues to grow and thrive and succeed, where, had we not had the behavioral tools to help certain people, it probably wouldn't have been as successful as it has been. So I could go on and on and on. Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things that you highlight is, if I go back to your example, when somebody can observe, you being sort of loud and having a strong voice and drowning out others, that's an observation of how you're behaving in the moment, but it's not telling you the why. And what we do is we say the why. Like, for instance, let's just go back and recast a made-up version of you. Let's say you're high dominance, high competing, and high discipline, all genetic. And then you're high expertise, you're overconfident on top of it. Yeah. Right? And when you're in those discussions and you sense that Kurt doesn't know the most effective way of solving the problem, your dominance will cause you to take control of the conversation. Your competitiveness would cause you to try to win the conversation. Yep. And so if I have low dominance and low competing, I'm not going to be as aggressive, and I might just quit. And to your point, the people that are saying less and listening more tend to have a better sense of reality and tend to have a lot to contribute. And so for someone like you that appears to be somebody that has strong leadership tendencies, you need to bring those voices into the discussion. And the better you do that, the more adept at leading you will become. And so by understanding the why, to say, look, Hardeep, the things that make you risk adverse and taking on the hardest tasks are the very things that can be disruptive when you're in the presence of a larger group of people. And as you learn to develop interpersonal skills and goodwill and balance, compromise, and accommodation, all learned behaviors, you'll be able to better leverage your natural gifts. And see, nobody did that for you in that moment. They didn't tell you the why. They just said...
we didn't. We weren't told the why. We were told what we're doing, and it was interesting to know that, to be conscious moving forward. I think it was good to know that, and I've always taken that on board. But knowing the why, we were just given a big book of all of our information and asked to read it, and I don't think I ever did read it, to be honest. But it was good to know. It was a nice little pie chart to show which way you were, but it is something that understanding the why would be very, very interesting as well. But knowing that what is happening also is something that you could really act upon straight away. And I'd like to think that I have acted upon it throughout my career, and it was good to learn those sort of things right at the beginning, when I was fresh out of university and in my first job on a graduate scheme in a leadership program as well, to help me boost my career. So yeah, very, very interesting.
Well, let me ask you a question. Yep. You said it would have been helpful to know the why. Let's translate that for thinking into something you and I do every day, which is advancing a cure for a disease. If we don't know the mechanism of action, why it works, is it a nice to know or is it a need to know?
Well, that's fundamental.
Right. Yeah, because we don't know everything that we inject into the body or expose the body to is going to have a side effect. And that side effect may be good or it may be bad. Mm-hmm. And understanding the mechanism of action, what's going on when we introduce that compound, and what effect it's going to have on the desired effect and the unintended effect.
Yes.
It's important, and it is the reason why drugs fail. It is the reason why things are pulled from the market, because of a lack of understanding of that. And so I would contend that the behavioral stuff, like this guy on this leadership team this morning said, it's not necessary. It's an absolutely necessary thing, but because we haven't done it, because most people don't know how it works, it's, my dad once said, you can't know that you want to live on the ocean if you've never seen one.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Right? Like if you grew up in a coal mining town like he did and you never saw the ocean, how could you know you want to live on the ocean?
Yeah.
Right?
It's true. Yeah. Very interesting. I mean, that's a good thing that you're doing there, which is different to other companies that do all these type of psychometric tests where you're taking it to a different level, which is bringing it back to the person, to the individual, and understanding from their specific point of view. And so in terms of Eureka Connect, what are your biggest challenges or bottlenecks that you're facing at the moment in your business? Whether it's any technology advances, or is it client acquisition, or any data problems or issues?
I think it's that differentiating what we do from what the Corn Fairies and the Strength Finders and the Insights and all these other programs do, in that having a better understanding of where the person is starting from. Because I don't subscribe to this idea that because you have certain genetic tendencies, that defines who you are and what you have to be.
Right.
And that is, many of these programs are trying to put a color or number on and define who you are. And when I look at it and say, we are dynamic, we know through neuroplasticity that we can change the brain. The brain can change. We can actually, if you take somebody that really struggles with music, if you introduce them to the right path of learning music, they can learn music or learn new language. That doesn't mean everybody's journey is going to be the same and that it wouldn't be harder for me than it may be for you, but it doesn't mean that it's not attainable. Yes. And I think what many of these programs do is they put people in a box and then those people practice being in that box. Okay. So the perfect example I would give you is when you label somebody an introvert, they immediately say, well, I'm an introvert. It drains me to go into a room with other people, and it's tiring and it's exhausting to talk and meet with new people, and I don't know what to say, and I'm just uncomfortable. Well, that's learned. Interpersonal skills are learned. And if I develop my interpersonal skills, if I learn how to connect to people, if I learn how to navigate conversations, if I learn how to show care and compassion, then I gain more joy from doing it, and I won't be drained in those situations. But as soon as you label somebody as an introvert and tell them it's okay to be that, then they continue to practice it.
Yeah, for sure. Very, very interesting that. So, I mean, you've touched on so that basically is what makes you different from everybody else that's out there doing it, is understanding the why. And would you say raising awareness for that differentiation between yourself and others out there would be your biggest challenge?
I think raising awareness to the importance, where that nuance of difference occurs, and that our data is really, really good at helping people understand where they are at a point in time. It's a picture of you. It doesn't define Hardeep as a person indefinitely. It defines where you were at that moment in time, and it defines some factors that are going to be more hardwired versus those that are more easily changed. And then secondly, how do you leverage that to improve performance? And so what I would compare it to is this. If you are a sprinter and you run, okay, when you run, how do I make you faster? There are three things that will make you faster. Number one,
with Usain Bolt, probably number one.
Yeah, Usain Bolt. Okay, so why was he so good? Number one, his gait, the length of his gait. It was longer than most. So when he took a stride, if his stride was the same speed as your stride, he's going to be ahead of you because he's got a gait that's 3 or 4 or 5 inches longer than yours. Number two, the speed with which he takes that stride. If he does that faster than you, now he's got two advantages, right? The length of his stride, just by the natural length of his legs compared to yours, and the speed with which he takes that stride. And then the third thing is the strength of his legs, meaning when he pushes off of that back foot, how far does that propel his body? It's physics. His weight versus the strength in the leg, and to the extent that that stride is lengthened, not by just the length of his legs, but by the length of the distance he covers because of the strength of his stride. And so if I'm a coach, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to make your legs longer, so I have to focus on the speed with which you take your strides and the strength of your legs. And that's what I look at on the behavioral side. If you are low dominance, I'm not going to tell you need to be more dominant. That would be like saying grow your legs, right? But if I see you have low social skills, if I see you have low stability, you're stressed, if I see you have lacking confidence, those are all learned behaviors that we can target and focus on. Sorry about that. Okay. Those are all things that we can focus on that are attainable. They're relevant. And that's where I think people miss it. That's where we differentiate ourselves, is that if you're going to run races and you need to be faster, then your training should help you to be faster. If you're going to take products to market and you don't understand as a leader or collaborator what is going to diminish your ability to do that, then I think you're missing the very most important point of the whole discussion. How do you make the team better relative to the actions they need to undertake?
Exactly. Yeah. Interesting. And in terms of the business at EurekaConnect at the moment, what stage are you at right now, and what does growth look like for you in the next 12 months?
Well, I think there's two things where we see slow growth on our leadership program as it exists today because it's high touch, Hardeep. It's where I touch almost all the clients. We do the assessments, it's all automated, we get the data, we build the reports, but I do the feedbacks, I do the training, or people on my team, but it's predominantly me. But what we're going to be launching next year is an AI agent where we can now do feedbacks with an AI agent, and it's actually scary how good it is, where we can have your assessment and then you're going to log onto a program and it's going to start walking you through your report, and you can ask it questions. You can ask it to give the feedback in Mandarin or, Spanish or French, which I can't do. My wife would tell you, my wife's a linguist. She says that I'm a cultural wasteland. She said I barely speak English. But the new AI agents are interactive. And what they do better than the human being, than Kurt, is that they're better able to use the body of data and literature to answer a question. So if you say to me, geez, Kurt, I really want to understand stress and the manifestations of stress relative to my profile, and we see that you've got single digit for energy, you're exhausted, that you have no energy, you can barely get out of bed.
Yeah.
Then what the AI agent would probably do is, I could do it too, is I could say, well, geez, maybe you're not getting enough sleep. Maybe your diet's not good. Maybe you're not getting the right level of physical activity. And those combinations of things are one of the things that manifests in you not having energy, is that you're just depleted because of nutrition, because of lack of sleep. But then there's the psychological factors. Maybe every little thing bothers you, if you see somebody cut in line at the grocery store, that's as significant to you as, your dad being sick and needing medical attention, that you can't differentiate the significance of each of those events in your life. Each of them upset you to the same degree. Well, that's another thing, that the data, when given to an AI agent, the AI agent might find more materials or more resources for you than Kurt just knows off the top of his head. And so it won't at the beginning have the same emotional connection that I could have with someone. But because it has a better technical and spectrum of knowledge, it's going to be better in different ways. And we believe this is valuable because it will be able to scale across companies, which is one of our big problems. I see for 2026, I'm very excited about, we'll grow our core business. We continue to do that. But this ability to take an AI agent and offer what we do, where it's going to be, in the 90th percentile or better as far as the spectrum of what it's providing to the individual and its experience to a broader spectrum of people, I'm very excited.
Okay, great. And in terms of reaching your new clients at the moment, what sort of growth channels are you using? So especially with this AI agent coming on board, that's going to really free you up and allow you to now process more a hell of a lot quicker, giving you extra bandwidth, right, for potentially new business. What channels of growth are you looking at to plug that gap in and really make the most of this AI agent taking a lot of the heavy lifting up?
Yeah, so we use word of mouth as predominantly how it's done now. I do my own podcast. I just don't do it with the adequate frequency. We need to get better at doing more frequency. We've done ours always live. Yeah. You and I are doing this virtually, but we've always done ours. If you go and look at the EurekaConnect.com website, shameless promotion of self. If you look at the website and you look at the Eureka Moment, or you look at YouTube Eureka Connect and look at the Eureka Moment podcasts, you'll find they're with very senior people, really accomplished people. We have a small following for that. So being able to extend that following so people can hear me speak to people like you or other leaders in the industry that are trying to advance businesses. It's not just biomedical, because that's where I spend a lot of my time. Industry, these concepts of leadership are industry agnostic. So we're using the social media would be a channel to get exposure the same as you're doing. Also looking at how do we better communicate through white papers or evidence or publications what we're doing with this behavioral data relative to advancing companies. So it's more of an academic approach as well, that we can analyze the data of the leadership teams relative to the performance of those teams and start to publish that data to show people what kinds of things did we do that yielded a better outcome from a standpoint of performance or raising capital, et cetera. So I think it's a combination of leveraging the social media, leveraging our existing client base. We've worked with now, I've personally done, I think, over 5,000 feedback sessions with people, and many of those people have gone through it multiple times.
Yeah.
So, we've got a pretty nice client base where we've worked directly with them.
Okay.
And then, looking at just general marketing. But I think I would ask you this, because you do a lot of work. How do you cut through the noise? How do you cut through the noise of the market right now? Because there's so much noise out.
It's just, it's being very specific with the targeting. Being very specific with the targeting and offering a unique proposition that differentiates yourself from everybody else, really. That's how, and you need to really, because a lot of the time the noise is very generic from generic companies offering a very generic service and they're just trying to hit as many people. They're going for quantity rather than quality, and that's exactly what we do differently. We really tailor our outreach to be more quality to the right people, highly specified to your requirements. So when somebody reaches your outreach, it resonates with them and their business and their requirements. So it's a lot more tailored. It's a lot more a tailored approach rather than just throwing a stone and seeing how many you can hit. It's throwing that right stone with higher accuracy.
Talk to me about how you do that, because I think it's that targeting, and how do you know what the right message is for the right person?
Yeah.
How are you? Tell me a little bit about your process.
Yeah, we'll talk about. I want to focus this podcast on you and your business, but definitely after this podcast, when we wrap up, we'll summarize there, and I can give you the exact details of what we can do for you, and how we approach that. So you mentioned that some good bottlenecks there of raising that awareness and reaching those right people, and as a company, you're innovating pretty fast. You're very different to what other companies are doing out there. So where do you see the biggest opportunity or the risk when it comes to scaling your business right now to market efforts?
I think one of the big things is capital. I've always self-funded. We've never raised capital. I always debate whether we should or shouldn't. If we had raised capital, we would have moved much faster than we have. So I think capital is always one thing, but that's pretty consistent with many businesses, having the proper amount of capital to move fast enough. I think the second thing is really getting that differentiation right. How do we differentiate, and how do we convince and build the trust in the audience that we're targeting that differentiation exists and it's relevant to them? That's really hard, because many CEOs say, I can't tell you how many times CEOs Hardeep has said to me, we're too busy to worry about team development or professional development. We've got to get certain deliverables done. And I sort of chuckled, because I said, the reason you're not getting them done, or the reason you'll fail, or the reason why you're struggling, is because of behavioral issues that you could deal with in an hour and a half at some level. And it's like it's a short lift to solve a problem. Helping them to see that is really difficult. Really, really difficult. And so that's one of my biggest challenges, is that I hope that at some point we develop a network of people that understand the importance of take the people issues out of the equation as much as you can and as often as you can before you engage in the hard work. That concept of that idea of defining problems accurately and taking the right action is really, it's really embedded in those 4 R's that I just outlined.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Curtis. And for the viewers, where can they find more about your business?
Absolutely. EurekaConnect.com is our website for the behavioral company. My assistant is Shauna Reed, Shana, and you can reach her at sreed@EurekaConnect.com. And she can set up a meeting with me or members of my team, and we can talk about helping you individually or your team with the behavioral work. And then ibeinc.org is the not-for-profit that I run. We've got a December session coming up where we have a 5-day class on translation, where we expose people not only to the curriculum and the behavioral training, but also a network of over 1,000 people that have extensive experience in regulatory, marketing, understanding clinical pathways, understanding commercial concepts. So we have this huge network that we continue to grow to support the translation and the innovator. So ibeinc.org, and also Shauna can help you there as well, sreed@EurekaConnect.com.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Curtis. Anyone interested, please reach out to Curtis or Shauna on that information. And fantastic talking with you today. And I hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you very much.
Hardeep, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be with your audience.
Thank you.